Alrighty, ladies and gentlemen, thank you all so much for tuning on in. Today we're going to be talking about the 4 classes of bikeways as stipulated by California Department of Transportation, also known as Caltrans. We'll be looking at various places throughout the city of Albuquerque and throughout the world, showing good examples of every single class of bikeway.
You may be wondering, why is this guy using Caltrans information in the city of Albuquerque? Well, first of all, I live in Albuquerque, so it's easy enough to get footage. Second of all, California sort of sets the precedent for all other states when it comes to urban design. But it's no Barcelona. Throughout this video, we're going to be looking at the advantages, disadvantages, and relative costs of each class of bikeway. So let's get started.
The first example we have is Class 1, also known as the bike path.
Bike paths are advantageous in that they offer the most safety to bicyclists. The defining feature of bike paths is that they're completely separated from automobile traffic. The disadvantage is the Class 1 bikeways, also known as bike paths, require the most space out of any of the 4 types of bikeways. Bike paths are the most expensive, coming in at $100 to $200 per linear foot. That equates to $500,000 to almost $1.1 million per mile. One of the most ideal and optimal designs for a bike path involves separating pedestrians from bicyclists. You could see an excellent example of this in front of the Real Madrid Stadium.
The second example that we have is the Class 2 bikeway, also known as the bike lane.
Bike lanes are advantageous in that they're easy to retrofit onto current streets. All you have to do is paint a stripe and you've developed a bike lane. One of the disadvantages to bike lanes is that they offer minimal protection to cyclists. In the most ideal circumstances, there are 2 stripes painted to offer more of a buffer to bicyclists. Class 2 bikeways are relatively cheap, coming in at $20 to $70 per linear foot, with retrofitting current roads being even less expensive. One of the defining features of a great Class 2 bikeway is signaling at intersections. While some states may have implemented stop-as-yield laws, it's best to have a dedicated bike signal that somebody could press to make the light turn green. Here's an example of just that at the intersection of Lomas and Chelwood.
The third example we have is the Class 3 bikeway, also known as a bike route.
I've also heard Class 3 bikeways referred to as Sharrows, which is a portmanteau of shared and arrows. The advantage of Class 3 bikeways are that they're even easier and cheaper to construct than the Class 2 bike lanes. The disadvantage is you get what you pay for, and they don't offer any protection to bicyclists. They just let drivers know that there might be bikes on the road. There's a good example of Sharrows on 3rd Street in downtown Albuquerque. While I was filming, I saw a car that was destroyed because somebody had burned the inside. We can do better than this. Here's an example of a Class 3 bike lane going one way and a Class 2 bike lane going the other. Painting Sharrows is incredibly cheap, at only $10 to $30 per linear foot.
The fourth and final example we have is the Class 4 bikeway, also known as a separated bikeway.
The Class 4 separated bikeways are similar to the Class 2 bike lanes, but there's normally some kind of physical barrier between the bikeway and the vehicular traffic lanes. That barrier could be something like a flexible post, like we see here on Louisiana Boulevard. It could also be something a little bit more beefy, like a concrete curb in the middle of the road. You see this on Carlisle. One thing I'd like to note, these Class 4 center bike lanes are super common in South America and even parts of Europe. That's not the case so much here in the United States. Another thing I'd like to note, every bikeway that I saw in Europe was either Class 1 or Class 4, meaning that bicyclists were always offered some form of protection against automobile traffic. I never saw the Class 2 bike lanes or Class 3 Sharrows over in Europe or South America. We've already touched on the advantages of Class 4 bikeways. They offer a lot more protection to bicyclists. The disadvantages are you have to plan ahead. You can't just immediately retrofit a street and hope things are going to be okay. They tried that on Louisiana and it kind of worked. The better way to do it, though, is to have the bikeway at a separate elevation than the vehicular traffic. You can see stuff like that in Madrid, Spain, where the sidewalk is separated from the bikeway, which is separated from the roadway. Construction costs of these Class 4 bikeway isn't terrible. They typically come in at $50 to $100 per linear foot. So before we wrap up this video, I do want to point out that the construction cost of a fully separated bike path isn't cheap, coming in at that $500,000 to $1 million per mile figure. But it's a bargain compared to constructing an entirely new road, which comes in at roughly $5 million per mile, plus maintenance. So that concludes this video. I really appreciate you watching. If you want to see more content like this, where we look at each city individually, or we look at center bike lanes, or we talk about what Albuquerque could do to improve, just let me know in the comments. Thanks so much for watching.